She walked through our front door at 8:14 on a Friday night, laughing at something the guy beside her had said. And I was sitting on the couch with leftover pasta, going cold in my lap, staring at the TV like I had never seen anything funnier in my life. I wasn't watching anything. I had turned it on so I would have somewhere to look. That was when I understood I had a problem. My name is James Hartley. I was 28, renting the second bedroom in a two-bedroom apartment in Austin, and up until approximately 8:14 on a Friday evening, I had been absolutely certain that my roommate and I were just friends, good friends, really good friends, the kind where you share leftovers and argue about the thermostat and know which shelf in the fridge is whose without anyone writing a single name on anything. The kind where you've seen each other at your worst and somehow that made things easier instead of complicated. The kind I had apparently been lying to myself about for 11 months straight. And the thing about lying to yourself is that it works remarkably well, right up until the moment it doesn't. You build little structures around the truth. You give it a different name. You say the word roommate enough times that it starts to sound like the whole sentence when it was never more than the first word. And then someone walks through your front door with a stranger beside her, and your pasta goes cold in your lap, and every single structure you built comes down at once, quietly, without a sound, while the television plays a show you're not watching. Her name was Claire Matthews. She was 27, worked in graphic design for a small agency 2 miles from our apartment, and had a laugh that started small and then took over whatever room she was in before she could stop it. She made the best coffee I had ever tasted in my life and claimed it was just normal coffee. She was wrong. She had an orange throw blanket she called Gerald, and she got personally offended when I suggested Gerald was a strange name for a blanket. She was the first person I wanted to text when something good happened, and the first person I actually called when something didn't. I knew all of that. I had filed all of that under friendship for nearly a year and congratulated myself on being a well-adjusted adult. Then she came home with a guy named Derek, and my pasta went cold, and I sat there on the couch feeling something I could not name, but absolutely recognized. Derek was fine. That was the genuinely aggravating part. He was not obviously terrible. He was tall, friendly-looking, had good shoes. He held the door open behind him when they came in. He said hello to me first. I had no reasonable material to work with. "Hey man," he said, easy, confident, like we might become friends. "Hey," I said back, like a man whose pasta had completely betrayed him. Claire dropped her bag near the hallway and looked at me with the expression she used when she was trying to decide something. Not suspicious, curious, the small tilt of her head that meant she had noticed something and was filing it away for later. "We're just grabbing drinks," she said. "Don't wait up." I wasn't waiting up. I was sitting on my own couch in my own apartment, watching a television show I had not registered 1 second of. Totally different. "Enjoy your night," I said, like a person who meant it. She looked at me for 1 second longer than the sentence required. Then she smiled, said something quietly to Derek, and they left. The door shut behind them. The apartment went quiet in the specific way it only goes when Claire isn't in it. Like the air conditioning sounds louder and the clock on the microwave becomes the most interesting thing in the room. I sat there for a moment. Then I looked down at my pasta. Then I got up and put it in the fridge because suddenly I had no interest in eating dinner at all. I should tell you how we got here. Not in the dramatic sense, just the actual sense. Claire and I met through a mutual friend who thought we'd make good roommates because, and I am quoting directly, "You're both ridiculously responsible, and neither of you will leave dishes in the sink for 3 days." That was the whole endorsement. That was the foundation of our living arrangement. Mutual dish hygiene. She moved in on a Saturday in October. I helped carry boxes because that was the reasonable thing to do. She had more books than anyone I had ever met, and she arranged them by color on the mock shelves, not alphabetically, which I found genuinely disorienting for about 2 weeks before I stopped noticing and then started to find charming in a way I never said out loud. She hung a print in the hallway of a painting I didn't recognize, and when I asked about it, she spent 20 minutes telling me the story behind it, with her hands moving the whole time. That was the moment, I think. Looking back, the 20 minutes, the hands. fact that I stayed standing in the hallway for all of it without once checking my phone. After that, she was just there. Consistently, easily, specifically there. She left a plant on the windowsill in the kitchen and watered it every Thursday without making any announcement. She knew the exact order to load the dishwasher, so things actually came out clean, which I had been doing wrong for years without knowing it. She had a specific playlist she put on when she was working and a different one for cooking, and a third one she played on weekend mornings that was softer and slower and somehow made the apartment feel wider than it was. I learned all of this without meaning to. It accumulated the way most important things do, quietly, in the background, while you're looking somewhere else. But I didn't label it. I made coffee the next morning and she said it was fine in a way that made it very clear it was not fine. And she took over the coffee duties permanently, and somehow that turned into a routine. And routines turned into something that felt like home. And home turned into something I didn't examine too closely because examining it felt dangerous. So I didn't. I called her my roommate. I introduced her to people as my roommate. When my sister asked about her for the fourth time in 2 months, I said we were just roommates. Claire and I got along. Well, the apartment was great. Please stop giving me that look at the dinner table. My sister had given me the look anyway. She always did. Now it was a Friday, and Claire was out with Derek, and I was sitting on my kitchen counter eating cereal at 9 o'clock because suddenly the couch felt strange to be on alone. My phone buzzed. My friend Marcus. How's the Friday treating you? I Fine. He sent back a skeptical emoji. Truthfully, he had earned it. I should also tell you about Marcus because Marcus factors into what happened next. And I feel he deserves some explanation before he opens his mouth. Marcus Webb had been my best friend since college. He was an architect, extremely good at understanding structural problems, which he applied as enthusiastically to buildings as he did to other people's emotional situations. He had the singular gift of seeing things before I was ready to see them and absolutely refusing to be quiet about it. He once told me 3 months before my last relationship ended that I looked like a man solving a problem rather than a man in love. I had argued with him for a full hour. He had been completely, entirely, irritatingly correct. He also had impeccable timing in the way that only very perceptive people do, which was another way of saying, he called me exactly when I needed someone to talk to and then said the exact thing I wasn't ready to hear. I called him because I had nothing else to do, and the cereal wasn't helping. He answered on the second ring. Something happened, he said. Not a question. Nothing happened. Claire brought someone home and they went out for drinks. Long pause. And you're calling me. And I'm calling you. James. Don't. You're jealous. I'm not jealous. I don't know what I am. That's what jealous feels like when you've been pretending not to be it for a year. I ate cereal without answering him. He let me. That was one of the things about Marcus. He could sit in silence with you without needing to fill it, which was rarer than it should be and more valuable than most people understood until they actually needed it. Then he said, you like her, not cruel, not teasing, just flat and clear and a little tired, the way Marcus got when he had been patient for a long time and was ready to stop being patient. She's my roommate. She's also a person you like, and those two things can both be true. I stared at the kitchen wall. The magnet on the fridge that Claire had put up said something about coffee in a font I could never fully read, and I had never asked her what it said because somehow that felt like opening a door. There was also a photo of her and her college roommate stuck there with a little clip. It had been on the fridge since October. I had looked at it every single morning for 11 months and was only now admitting to myself why I could find it for cross the chanchin without trying. I know, I said. Another pause. Shorter this time. So what are you going to do? I put my cereal bowl in the sink. I don't know yet. Marcus said, don't wait until it becomes a bigger problem. I said goodnight. He said goodnight. I went to bed before 10 on a Friday, like a man who had his feelings completely managed. I did not sleep much. Claire came home at midnight. I heard her keys, the door, the soft sound of her shoes coming off in the hallway. I heard the kitchen faucet run for a minute. Then her bedroom door. Then quiet. I lay in the dark feeling like someone who had discovered a leak in his ceiling and was actively choosing not to look up. Saturday morning, she was already making coffee when I came out. Gerald, the blanket, was on the couch. Her laptop was open on the kitchen table. She was standing at the counter in an oversized sweatshirt and wool socks, staring at the coffee machine like it owed her something. Her hair was in a slightly chaotic bun that she had clearly not looked at in a mirror, and she had a tiny ink mark on the side of her wrist from working last night, and she was standing in my apartment at 9 in the morning, looking like the most familiar person in my life. All of that was not new. What was new was that I let myself notice all of it instead of filing it somewhere else. When I walked in, she looked up when I walked in. Morning! She handed me a mug without me asking. That was the thing about Claire, she remembered. She noticed. She had been making my coffee for 11 months, and she had figured out exactly how I took it before I had ever said a word, and she acted like that was completely ordinary. Maybe for her it was. Maybe remembering people was something she did without effort. But I had not always been remembered correctly, and I knew the difference between someone paying attention and someone performing the idea of paying attention. Claire just paid attention, simply, without making a ceremony of it. How was last night? I asked, because not asking would have been stranger. She turned back to the counter. Fine. Good. She tilted her head a little. Derek's nice. That's great. He's very enthusiastic about hiking. I opened the fridge. I don't hike. I know you don't. She didn't say it meanly, just like a fact she owned. I poured orange juice. She poured her coffee. We existed in the kitchen the way we had been existing in the kitchen for nearly a year, close and easy, and full of small familiar routines. And I tried not to notice how much I didn't want any of it to change. Then she turned around and leaned against the counter and looked at me with the head tilt again. Only this time she didn't file it away. You were weird last night, she said. I was sitting on the couch eating dinner. You turned the TV off the second we walked in. I finished eating. You looked like someone had told you your car needed a new engine. Her voice was gentle, but the observation was exact. That was another Claire thing. She was precise without being sharp about it. I looked at my orange juice. I was tired. You were not tired. I looked up. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite name. Not accusatory. Not certain. Something between curious and careful, like she was holding a question and wasn't sure whether to ask it yet. Then she said it. Were you jealous? The kitchen went very still. The coffee machine clicked off. Outside, a car alarm sounded briefly and then stopped. I could have laughed it off. I was very good at laughing things off. I had been doing it for 11 months, through late nights on the couch and coffee handed over without asking and 20-minute hallway conversations and every other small thing that added up to something I kept refusing to name. Laughing was faster. Laughing let you stay where you were. Laughing was a way of answering without actually answering, which I had turned into something close to an art form over the past year. I had laughed when my sister gave me the look at the dinner table. I had laughed when Marcus first brought her name up in that specific tone. I had laughed at myself every time I caught myself saving a story all day so I could tell it to Claire first. I had very successfully laughed my way through 11 months of information that should have been obvious. I looked at Claire. She was still watching me. Patient, steady. A little bit scared, maybe. That was the part that got me. The little bit scared underneath the steady. Because Claire wasn't scared easily. She argued with difficult clients without raising her voice. She had once calmly walked back into a restaurant and told the waiter his math was wrong on our bill and waited while he recalculated without any trace of awkwardness. She had driven me to the ER at 2 in the morning when I thought I was having a heart attack and turned out to be having a panic attack. And she had sat in the waiting room the whole time and never once made me feel stupid about it. When I came out and apologized for ruining her night, she had waved me off, like I had done something completely ordinary, which from her meant she had meant it completely. She didn't scare easy, but she looked a little scared right now. I set my glass down on the counter. Yeah, I said. I was. She didn't answer immediately. That was worse than any answer she could have given me. She looked at the mug in her hands, then at Gerald on the couch, then at some middle point between us like the apartment might have instructions written somewhere she hadn't read yet. Claire, I said, say something. She looked up. Her face had changed, not to something bad, to something honest, which was somehow more nerve-wracking. How long? She asked. I thought about lying. I didn't. A while. She nodded slowly. Okay, now you sound like me. That caught her. A small surprised laugh. Just one, and then she pressed her mouth together to stop it. But I had seen it. That was enough. I'm not saying this to make things complicated, I said. And I'm not saying it because Derek took you to get drinks, and I suddenly noticed my feelings, and not like an idiot in a movie, she said quietly. How long is a while? I leaned back against the counter. I think since the hallway. When you told me about the painting. She went still. That was October. Yeah, we've been living together for 11 months. I know. She looked at Gerald for a long moment. Then she said, James, I need to tell you something and I need you to actually hear it and not do that thing. You do where you make a joke so nobody has to sit in the uncomfortable part. I crossed my arms. What thing? The thing. She gave me a look where something real happens and you hand back a one-liner like you're returning something you didn't order. I breathed out. Okay, I'm listening. She set her mug on the table. She stood up a little straighter like she was preparing to say something she had decided to say before she could undecide it. I have also been ignoring something for a while, she said. My chest did something odd, not painful, more like bracing, she continued. I went out with Derek last night because I thought it would help, like if I was doing the normal thing, going out and meeting someone, I would stop being so aware of you all the time. She paused. It didn't help. She looked at the counter between us. He talked about hiking for 45 minutes. That's a lot of hiking. So much hiking, she said. 3 different trails. 2 of them in states I have never been to. He had opinions about trail mix that I did not expect anyone to have. And all I kept thinking was that you would have made a face at the 15-minute mark and I would have had to look away. So I didn't laugh. I didn't say anything. She kept going. That's not a fair reason to not enjoy a perfectly fine date, and it's not Derek's fault. He was perfectly nice and very earnest, and he talked about hiking with real genuine enthusiasm, and I sat across from him, feeling terrible the entire time because none of it landed, because I was sitting across from someone who was trying. And all I could think about was the person I left at home, eating leftover pasta. She stopped. Her voice went quieter. That's not something I can keep doing. I can't keep going out trying to feel something and then coming home to the thing I was trying to replace. She stopped, swallowed. I looked at her. You knew about the pasta? I always know about the pasta. She almost smiled. James, I live here. The kitchen was quiet in a different way now. Not the empty quiet from last night. Crowded with something neither of us had said for 11 months. I stepped away from the counter, not toward her, just away from it, like I needed to not be propped up by anything while I said the next part. I should have said something before last night. She nodded. I should have too. Why didn't you? Because you're my roommate, she said, and I didn't want to lose the apartment. I stared at her. That's not entirely a joke, she said. Her voice went a little quieter. You make everything easier, James. The mornings. The evenings, the part where something goes wrong, and I don't want to deal with it alone. I didn't want to say the wrong thing and turn all of that into something awkward we couldn't undo. I understood that. Exactly. The math of it. How something can feel worth protecting so much that you protect it right up until it disappears anyway. I said. I kept telling myself that calling you my best friend was the honest version, that I was being accurate. She looked at me. Were you? Not even a little. She looked at the window. Then she said, quietly and seriously, I am scared of this. I know. No. She turned back to me. I mean it. I'm scared of the actual this, of saying it out loud and it being real and then something going wrong because something always goes wrong. And then I have to find a new apartment and all my books are organized by color and moving them is a nightmare. I almost laughed. I stopped myself. What if nothing goes wrong? I said. She looked at me. That's an optimistic sentence. I've been practicing. That got a real smile. Small and fast, but real. We stood there on opposite sides of the kitchens in the Saturday morning light with Gerald on the couch and the coffee machine off, and 11 months of small accumulated things sitting between us, waiting to be called what they were. I said, I'm not asking you for anything dramatic right now. I'm not standing here making a speech. She tilted her head. You're kind of making a speech. I'm providing context. That's the speech version of context, Claire. I looked at her directly. I just don't want to go back to pretending I didn't say it. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Okay, okay, like you mean it? Okay, like I also don't want to pretend. She pressed her lips together. Though I wanted on the record that your timing is inconvenient. How is my timing inconvenient? I have a project due Monday. I exhaled, something almost like a laugh. Your project due Monday is not related to this. Everything is related to everything when I'm stressed, she said. But she was smiling now, really smiling, and the kitchen felt warmer than it had 10 minutes ago by a significant degree. I went back to the counter and picked up my orange juice. She went back to her coffee. For a minute, we just stood there the way we always stood in the kitchen, except not exactly the same. The same in shape, so different in weight. She said eventually, "What happens now?" I thought about it. "We have breakfast." "That's it? That's the first part." I looked at her. "We've already spent 11 months doing everything else backward. We can start the actual beginning correctly." She considered that. "We don't have anything for breakfast. We have eggs. I'm not making eggs at 9 a.m. on a Saturday, James. I can make eggs." She looked at me for a full second. "You burnt eggs last time. I have improved, have you?" "Meaningfully." She pointed at the pan on the stove. "Prove it." So I made eggs. They were not perfect. The edges crisped a little too much and I slightly oversalted them because I was talking instead of measuring. But Claire sat at the kitchen table and ate all of hers and didn't say a word about the edges, which from her was practically a standing ovation. We ate and talked about her project and about nothing and about the neighbor down the hall who had apparently gotten a second dog without telling the building management. Normal things. Ordinary things. Except every time I looked up, she was looking back, and neither of us looked away as fast as we used to. That was new. That was different. That was the one small thing that meant everything had shifted. Write in the comments right now. Have you ever been jealous of someone before you were even willing to admit you cared about them? Drop it below. I want to know. Marcus called at noon. I answered. So? He said. No greeting, no preamble. Just so. We talked this morning. And we're figuring it out. Long pause. I could hear him deciding whether to say something. He said it. I told you. I know. A full year, James. I'm aware of the timeline, Marcus. I just want to be appreciated for being right about this for an extended period. You're appreciated, I said. Don't make it weird. He laughed. Is she still planning to see Derek again? I don't think so, because of the hiking. 45 minutes of hiking conversation, I confirmed. That man talked himself out of a second date. In fairness, he didn't know the context. Context is everything, Marcus said. That's just life. He was right. Context was everything. 11 months of shared context, of coffee and leftovers, and late conversations, and the slow build of someone becoming the person you reach for before you've thought about reaching, that was not nothing. That was the whole thing. That had been the whole thing for a long time, and I had just been careful not to look at it directly. After I got off the phone, I knocked on Claire's bedroom door. She was working on her project at her desk, laptop open, hair in a messy bun, reading glasses on. She wore reading glasses when she worked, and she always seemed vaguely embarrassed about them, which was completely unreasonable. I need to ask you something, I said. She swiveled her chair. Her glasses were still on. Are you going on a second date with Derek? She looked at me over the top of the glasses. I'm not. Because of the hiking or because of this morning? She took the glasses off and set them on the desk. Both, she said, but mostly this morning. That was the only answer I needed. I started to go back to the hallway. James, I stopped, she said. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. Before last night, before you had to watch me walk through the door with someone else, I turned around. You have nothing to apologize for. I do, actually. She folded her hands on the desk. I knew something was there. Not all of it. Not in a way I let myself look at clearly, but I felt it. And instead of being honest, I made a reservation for two at a Thursday happy hour and showed up with a stranger and called it moving forward. I leaned against the doorframe. Did it feel like moving forward? She looked at her hands. It felt like running in the wrong direction really fast and hoping the momentum made it feel like progress. That's a precise way to describe it. It's what happened. I came back into the room and sat on the edge of her bed, a thing I had done 100 times before, because that was the kind of friends we were, easy in each other's spaces, comfortable where other people had to be invited. She turned her chair slightly to face me. Can I ask you something? I said. She nodded. That morning in October, the hallway. You told me about the painting for 20 minutes. She smiled a little. It's a good painting. You used your hands the whole time. I always use my hands. I know. I looked at her. Did you know then? Even a little? She thought about it. Not in a way I could have said out loud. But I remember thinking, when you finally went to your room, that the hallway felt different. Smaller. After you left. The room went quiet. After a second, I said, we were both ridiculous. Monumentally, she agreed. We could have just talked. We absolutely could have. She looked at the wall. We are both apparently very bad at this. I thought we were both very good at communication. In professional settings, she tilted her head. Personal settings as apparently require an external catalyst. Your external catalyst was Derek talking about trails in Utah, and yours was watching me leave with someone and not being able to finish dinner. She said it without cruelty. Just accurately. Yeah, I said. That's what did it. She nodded. We're a pair, we are. Neither of us said anything for a minute. Outside, the Saturday street sounds came through the window. Somewhere someone was playing music too loud and someone else was dealing with it. Normal afternoon. Normal city. The apartment felt entirely different from every normal afternoon before it. Claire said, eventually, I want to do this correctly. I looked up. Define correctly. She thought about it. I want to have an actual first date. Not here. Not in the apartment. Somewhere with a table and a menu and a reason to dress like I tried. That is a completely reasonable thing to want. I'm not interested in turning our kitchen into the beginning of something and then never leaving the kitchen. I almost laughed. I've been told I make good eggs. You singe the edges, I said, meaningfully improved. Not perfect, she smiled. Saturday. Next Saturday. She held my eyes. Take me somewhere with a real menu, James. Okay, I said, not a sports bar. I wasn't going to say a sports bar. You were considering it. I was not considering it. She raised one eyebrow. I absolutely had been considering it for approximately 2 seconds before quickly abandoning the idea. This was the thing about Claire. She was precise and she was correct, and there was no useful argument against her. Somewhere good, I said. I'll figure it out. She nodded once, like it was settled. Like the most complicated conversations of the last year had arrived at its conclusion, and now she could get back to her project. She put her reading glasses back on and swiveled toward her laptop. I sat there for a moment longer than I needed to, which she noticed. James. Yeah, go do something productive. She didn't look up. I have a deadline. I stood up, pulled the door halfway closed. Claire. For what it's worth, I said. I really like the painting. I still don't know what it's called. She looked over her shoulder, and the smile she gave me was different from all the other ones. Not small, not pulled back, just real and full and pointed directly at me. I'll tell you over dinner, she said. Next Saturday. I went back to the living room and sat on the couch and picked up my phone and put it back down and looked at Gerald the blanket on the cushion beside me. Then I looked at the hallway and the kitchen and the print on the wall I still didn't know the name of. Everything looked the same. The bookshelves organized by color, the coffee machine on the counter, the same apartment we had been sharing for 11 months. Nothing had moved. Nothing had changed in the physical sense. Everything was different in every other sense. I texted Marcus a single word. Happy, he responded immediately. Told you. I put my phone face down on the cushion and didn't reply because he had told me and we both knew it. And sometimes the right thing to do when your best friend has been correct about something for a year is to give him the silence and let it count as a standing ovation. Write in the comments. Did I wait too long or did it take exactly as long as it needed to? And have you ever had a moment where you saw your own feelings clearly for the first time and immediately wished you'd seen them about 6 months earlier? Next Saturday came. I took her somewhere with a real menu and good lighting, and a reason to dress like she tried. She wore a dark green dress and earrings I hadn't seen before, and I noticed both of those things immediately and pretended for approximately 4 seconds that I hadn't. I got there 3 minutes early because I was not going to be the person who arrived to his own first date running behind. I had researched the restaurant on Tuesday, checked the menu twice, and picked a table in the corner by the window because it had good light and nobody could sit directly beside us and listen. She came in exactly on time, saw me already seated, and said, "You're nervous." I said I was not nervous. She sat down across from me and unfolded her menu and said, without looking up, "You tucked in your shirt." I look at the menu. I often tuck in my shirt. You do not often tuck in your shirt, James. There's no winning this, is there? She looked up over the top of her menu. No. But it's charming that you try. The waiter came and we ordered and talked the way we always talked, which is to say easily and in every direction at once, but also differently, because now when she reached across the table to point at something on the menu and her hand was close to mine, neither of us pretended not to notice. There was a particular relief in that. 11 months of carefully not noticing things, and then one Saturday, and you could just be where you actually were. The painting, I said eventually. Tell me about the painting. She smiled and set her menu down and started talking, hands moving the whole time. The artist, the period, the specific thing about the composition that most people looked past because they were too busy looking at the obvious part. I sat across the table from her and listened to every word. I did not check my phone once. It was the best first date I had ever had. It was also 11 months late. Neither of those things canceled out the other. On the walk home, she put her hand in mine on the second block. Not dramatically. Not announced. Just reached over and took it like she had been planning to, and had finally decided the moment was right and did not need anyone's permission to act on it. I held on the same way. The city moved around us the way it always moved, fast and indifferent. But the sidewalk felt like it had a different quality than it had every other night I had walked down it. At the apartment door, she unlocked it and then turned around. For the record, she said, "I already knew you liked the painting." I stared at her. What? October. The hallway. She tilted her head. Nobody stands in a hallway for 20 minutes because they're politely interested, James. You knew? I had a strong suspicion. You let me stand there for 20 minutes. She smiled. It was a very good 20 minutes, Claire, I said. She kissed me before I could finish the sentence. Quiet, warm, quick. Then she stepped back, still smiling, like she had been holding that moment the same way I had been holding mine, carefully out of the way for a specific occasion. Was that okay? She asked. That was excellent. Good, she said, and opened the door. Because I've been thinking about doing that since approximately October, and it was nice to finally stop thinking and just do it. She walked into the apartment. I followed. She put her bag down. I put my keys on the hook. Gerald the blanket was on the couch where he always was. The bookshelves ran their full length of color, from deep blue to pale yellow, in the way they always had. The coffee machine sat on the counter. The print hung in the hallway. Everything the same. Everything different. I said, "You knew in October." She turned on the kitchen light. "I had a strong suspicion in October," she corrected. "I knew at Thanksgiving when you drove 4 hours to pick me up from my parents' house. Because my car broke down, and you didn't make it a big thing, you just came. You texted me that you were on your way before I had even figured out what to ask or who to call. I looked at my phone and saw your name and felt something I had no good explanation for, and I filed it under gratitude because that was the easier word." I looked at her. "You never said anything then either." She filled a glass of water at the sink. "Neither did you. Fair point." She leaned against the counter. "We're both very stubborn, apparently, and also a little oblivious. Speak for yourself." She gave me the look over the rim of her glass, the specific look that meant she had thought about this more carefully than I had and was being generous by not saying so directly. "Both of us," she said, "equally." She was right. She was almost always right. I was going to have to get used to saying that more often, which did not feel like a burden at all. I sat down on the couch. She came over and sat beside me. Gerald was between us for approximately 40 seconds before she moved him to the floor, which he withstood without comment. The apartment was quiet in the right way this time, the full way, the kind that came from being exactly where you were supposed to be and knowing it. She said, "I'm glad Derek talked about hiking." I said, "I'm glad I burnt the pasta." She laughed. "You didn't burn the pasta, James. It was inedible. It was cold. That's different." I looked at her. She looked back. "This is the beginning," she said. Not a question, just placing it somewhere solid. "Yeah," I said, "the actual one." She leaned her head on my shoulder. I put my arm around her. Outside, the city kept going the way it always went. And the apartment was exactly the same apartment it had been every night for 11 months. Same shelves, same kitchen, same print in the hallway I still didn't know the full name of. Except I finally stopped pretending I didn't know what it meant to come home to it. If you like this one, leave a like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had a moment where you were jealous of someone before? You were even willing to admit you cared? Drop your story below. I'll see you in the next one.